Now, if that's the case, you need to throw away those practice questions. With the experience of the exam, now you can evaluate these questions more critically. You can make sure that you are practicing with questions that best align with the exam. Hi, I'm Angela Murray, SHRM SCP, SPHR, and your favorite HR exam coach. If you're here, chances are you didn't pass your SHRM exam. It's not the end of the world. In some cases, you do all you can and it just doesn't culminate in the result you're looking for. And then sometimes you don't do enough of the right things, and that also shows up on test day. Either way, there is good news. You have a second chance. Now, I know after months of studying, it's disheartening that your hard work doesn't bear the fruit that you want. It might not feel like it right now, but this does give you an advantage so that you can make sure the next go around, you won't get the same results. Let's dive in. The first question that I'm usually asked after a failed certification attempt is, Angela, do you think I should try again? And I'm going to be honest with you. There are pros and cons for reattempting your exam, and there's no clear answer for everybody. I would love to say definitively, yes, you should try again. There are clear benefits, but this is about your own personal growth. Studying for the certification introduces you to new processes. It introduces you to new practices that you may never have been exposed to. And you can take that information back to your organization, whether you pass the exam or not. Now, the most obvious reason is the value that the certification holds in the HR world. We're starting to see more and more that employers are showing preference to candidates that are certified, and in some cases, they are requiring that you are certified just for consideration. It also does come with the likelihood of getting a raise or a promotion or some other kind of advancement. That's probably what drove you to the certification in the first place. So yes, there are some clear benefits, but there are some other things that you need to think about as well. You can't ignore the cost and the time investment. The cost of the exam with the study materials and the prep classes, it can add up pretty quickly. And then preparing for the certification also requires a lot of time. That means time away from your family, time away from your friends. It can be challenging to try to balance a personal life and a work life and now a study life. And then whether you choose to admit it or not, there is an emotional toll, and that's probably your biggest investment. Your first attempt can be stressful, but the pressure of the second attempt can be a lot more stressful. Now, I don't want to scare you, so let me be clear. The second attempt doesn't make it any harder to test, but the pressure that you put on yourself is what makes it more taxing. So you really need to ask yourself, are you ready to commit the time, the money, and the emotional requirement to get this done? If your answer is yes, there's absolutely no reason that you shouldn't go for another attempt. There are just too many clear advantages to give up on it right now. Since you've taken your exam, you now have two very powerful tools, and I'm going to tell you how to use those later. But you now have experience and your score report, and there are no two things that work better together. The first thing you need to ask yourself when you're walking away from the exam is, based on what I encountered, how effective was my study strategy? The three main points you need to reflect on are your study material, your practice strategy, and your time commitment. One of the first questions you need to ask yourself is, did my study material cover everything that I encountered on the exam? Were there any things on that exam that you were blindsided by? If there were, you need to make sure that you go find better resources. If there weren't, then based on what you encountered, you need to determine which of your study resources best prepared you. Which were most helpful and why? Were there certain study methods that help you retain the information better? Or were you better able to recall information based on a certain resource? Did you find yourself recalling your flashcards more than you recalled your note summary? Did you refer to the information that you discussed in your study group more than your reading? You need to be truly reflective so that you can tailor your study strategy to best align with what is going to make you most successful. This could be the difference in your passing and failing. Now, if there were too many things that you had absolutely never heard of on test day, it's probably best that you do a complete overhaul of your study resources and just start from scratch. Now, if all the information was familiar to you, but you just couldn't recall the specifics, then it might mean you probably focused on maybe memorization when you should have been focusing on application. Or maybe you were reading when you should have been listening. These are the things that you only know from experience, and that's why experience is a key factor. The next question you need to ask yourself is, were my practice questions reflective of the exam questions? Now, this is two parts. You want to reflect on whether or not the structure of the practice questions you used were reflective of the exam. Was the structure of the questions a total shock to you? Now, if that's the case, you need to throw away those practice questions. With the experience of the exam, now you can evaluate these questions more critically. You can make sure that you are practicing with questions that best align with the exam. If the structure of the questions were reflective of the exam, the next thing you need to evaluate is whether the content of the question also aligned with what was in the exam. Were there concepts or ideas or processes in the questions that you had never heard of? If that's the case, you guessed it, throw away those practice questions and start from scratch. Again, this is things that only experience can teach you. The next point of reflection is time management. Did you manage your time well? Or did you feel rushed? Or maybe you even ran out of time. Did you spend too much time on one question or flag so many questions that you couldn't go back and answer all of them? All of these things are important considerations so that you can work on that and change that before the next test day. You want to work on also building up your stamina. So try to recreate the exam environment as much as you possibly can. Then time yourself to try to figure out how much time that you need to answer each question. And then you can build your strategy for answering the questions around that timing. There is a second part to time management that you absolutely have to reflect on. You have to reflect on the time that you spent studying and ask yourself truthfully, was it time well spent? Were you able to get through each section in the BASC and adequately test yourself using the proficiency indicators? Did you give too much time trying to memorize things rather than actually trying to apply what you were learning? Did you have a dedicated study plan and stick to that? If there were some missteps there, good news, you now have time to fix it. But time management is crucial. It's crucial in your study plan, but it is also especially crucial on test day. Okay, now we've talked about experience. That's the first tool that I told you about. The next tool in your tool belt is your score report. In my opinion, this is actually like your golden ticket. So the score report is broken down into like this yellowish section, which lists your areas of improvement. And then there's that bluish gray area, which lists the areas of strength. And then your exam is scored for you. And the closer your tick mark is to the yellow or the blue area indicates how well you did in that section. You need to go through this score report with a fine-tooth comb. Give extra time to studying the topics where you scored the lowest. And so now in conjunction with your experience, you can adjust your study strategy to overcome those weak areas. Write down your strengths and weaknesses, like make a list. It's going to help you to better prioritize. And then look for patterns in your score report. Like, for example, if you scored weak in all of the competencies, it probably means that you didn't do well in the situational questions because they do heavily come from the competencies. If you scored lowest in people, maybe it means that you have a gap in knowledge around talent management or, employee engagement or something. This might also be the time that you need to reach out for additional help. I mean, there is nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you need an expert. So maybe enroll in a class or join a conference or a webinar, especially if they are covering your weak areas. Now, the BASC is going to take a back seat to your score report. The BASC used to be your guide, but now your score report is your guide, and you're going to use your BASC as more of an evaluation tool, right? Now, of course, you still want to concentrate on the key concepts of the BASC for all of the topics, especially the ones that you're weak in, but mostly use your score report to guide you. Now, the last thing you need to do is be kind to yourself. You did your best. You deserve kindness whether you passed or failed. You showed up. You took the time to give it your all, to study for the exam. A lot of people rescheduled their exam because they couldn't handle the pressure. At least you showed up and you gave it your best. So be kind to yourself. You have another chance. You have a third chance or a fourth chance if you need it. Of course, that is going to come with additional money. It's going to come with additional time. But just know you can do this. It's not impossible. There are literally thousands of HR professionals who pass the exam, and you can do it too. You just need to make sure that you adjust your study plan to make you successful